Hey guys, welcome back. This time I have a 23 Atal'Dazar for you that me and my guild group ran. One thing I should mention is our tank normally is a blood DK, but he's playing as rogue in this key. That is Zay. And then our tank in this key is a friend of ours who plays Prot Warrior, so we brought him along. Our Demon Hunter was not in this key, so not our typical group, but you know, this is a solid group for sure. And Callie's a good friend, so glad to have him. Anyway, so this very first pull going into Atal'Dazar is very sketchy. You have some stalkers, which are pretty deadly. You have the witch doctor, who you need to interrupt all the time. You have the guys who cast shield bash, the shield bearers, who can be deadly if you miss position. Before we did this 23, we tried a 24, and I scuffed it the very first on this very first pull because I was too close to the shield bearers, and they just one-shot me with their shield bash. So the way the shield bearers work is they'll just cast shield bash on whoever's the closest target, and it does a ton of damage. So you want to make sure that if you're going to shroud over there like this and do a 3-pack or whatever, and positioning is kind of wonky, you want to make sure that you're not the closest target so that you don't get punched in the face by those shields, because it will one-shot you. This is just a 23 and it one-shot me, so I think you could probably disperse and survive, but it's not worth it. It's way easier to just get out of the way. Anyway, we were just rotating kicks on the Witch Doctor. In that first pull, we wanted to burn the totem down first so that the Honor Guard started doing his little spit thingy so that we could start actually damaging him. And then, as soon as the totem is dead, our next priority is killing the Witch Doctor so that we can stop interrupting. And then the priority after the Witch Doctor is to finish off the Honor Guard so that his big AoE damage won't wipe us. And then after that, it doesn't really matter, so long as we're interrupting the shield bearers' big shield thing that they cast. So this is Samrek, the fear guy. Basically the same thing as normal. I forgot to mention, sorry about this new overlay. I had to pull this video from my VODs from Twitch. Typically when I post these, I just record the dungeon separately, and I don't have the Twitch overlay on top. But I didn't record this one, so the only way I could get it was pulling it off of my VODs. So I apologize for the overlay, adding additional information that you don't need, like the chat and all that. But if you like this, always feel free to stop by and watch me on Twitch. I wouldn't mind that at all. Anyway, so we do that fear guy. I mass dispel the very first one, and then I have it back up to mass dispel the very last one. Right there, we just did a triple Sarid pack. So because we have a rogue, our rogue can cast tricks of the trade, run out, grab the Sarids down the stairs to the right, grab the Sarids in the middle, and grab the Sarids out on the bridge with the skyscraper in it. And he can tricks them all to the tank. The tank runs over to that wall spot that he was in, jumps up on top, and they all snap to him. And then as long as he keeps jumping, they'll stay snapped to him, and they'll never jump on the rest of us. Right here we're doing a classic 2-pack pull on the left that a lot of groups do. Our mage is standing on top of that little wall right there to make it so that the Juggernaut never dashes at anybody. The Juggernaut will dash, I think, at the furthest away person, or maybe the Juggernaut dashes at a player who's not in melee, I guess. There's actually 2 Juggernauts in this pack. Basically, what you do is you have a range, just go stand on top of that little wall thing that the mage is standing on over there. And it makes it so that if the rest of you stand in melee of the Juggernauts, like we were, all bunched up in a ball like that, then the Juggernauts will never do their merciless assault. And, I mean, they'll cast it, but it'll never go off, really. So you can just completely avoid that mechanic. That's the only reason we can even do that pull, because if the merciless assaults were going off like regular, then they would one-shot me almost guaranteed. Like, I got hit by one at the beginning of that pull, and it does like tons of damage, 95% of my health at least. So if you have a fire mage, which most groups do, you can put them on that. I typically go stand in the safe spot rather than our mage Schlim, but on this pull, we decided to have Schlim do it. It can be a little finicky getting up there, but the way I do it is I just run over to the wall, stand right next to the wall, don't press any movement keys, just jump straight up and then push forward when you're near the apex of your jump, and you should land on the wall. But really, I mean, you can go up higher on the stairs and jump down onto the wall. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. It's not that bad. But there are people who have problems with it, so just take some practice, like everything in Mythic Plus. Okay, so we do this Void Weaver spider guy. We're using to skip the stairs over there. We were trying to line of sight him so that we could drop this portal closer. So our tank and our mage go down the stairs, but our rogue and I are both up here still fighting the guy, so there was a bit of miscommunication there. Right here is one of my biggest sadnesses when playing with Fire Mage. So we need to wait for his combust for this pull because it's super dangerous. We need to melt it really quick. But because we need to wait for his combust, it means that my damage going into the pull is going to be really, really bad because I lose all of my chorus stacks. Our mage in the comms literally asked for 30 seconds of a wait between that last pull and this one, which is honestly worth it in this case because look at the DPS right now. He's doing almost 400. He's doing over 400k DPS. And if I had kept my chorus stacks, I would not be doing that much damage. And I'm still doing decent damage anyway, 180k. So it's worth it because a combust from a fire mage outweighs chorus of insanity stacks from a shadow priest by a long shot, right? So it was worth it. It just sucks that you come out of a pack, you have a ton of crit and everything, and you're feeling really good about yourself, and then you have to wait 30 seconds for the next pull, and you just lose all your stats and everything. Not a huge deal though. That pack that we just pulled, there's a safe spot that our mage was standing on if you want to go back a couple seconds and look. It's on the left side, so when you come up the stairs, there's like the rectangle hole in the ground that the stairs come out of, right? And if you stand on like the lip of the left side looking up the stairs, there's like a really finicky but consistent safe spot that you can stand in. Again, you want either your mage or whatever ranged player to go stand there, and it does the same thing that the other same safe spot does, where it cancels out the Juggernaut's assaults. So that's important to do. It can save your... I mean, you don't want those assaults going off, so if you don't do that, you got to have some other way to take care of the assaults. It just makes things way easier. Almost every group does that. Okay, so big things about this boss that you need to keep in mind. Those golds that are going across the floor, if you get hit by one of those, you'll die instantly. So you need to keep a good eye on those. A lot of the times when they go through the boss like that, we're all calling it out in the comms. We're all saying, hey, there's a gold going through the boss, because it can be hard to see. This Gilded Claws that she's casting right now makes her melee attacks do a ton of damage, a ton of extra magic damage, I'm pretty sure. So you can purge it with your single target purge, Dispel Magic, and you want to purge it as fast as possible every single time. There's also a dot that goes out on players from the pools. It throws a piece of gold on somebody, and that person takes a lot of damage. If it goes on you, you're going to take a lot of damage, and it's probably something you should at least consider dispersing. It can be dispelled, so if your healer is all over it, then you're okay. But if it's like sketchy at all, then you should probably disperse. The only other time you would disperse is during her big like drain life phase thingy ability, where you get into the blood and then she starts sucking all your life force or whatever. That's another potential spot to disperse because the damage going out from that is pretty high. Right here we're trying a strat that we had never practiced before, where you snap a bunch of the Sarid packs onto that little snap spot. And okay, so first thing I should mention, I died to the Tiki Flame on the stairs. That's just a positioning error. I need to get better about knowing exactly where between those tiki flames is safe to stand. If you look, I'm pretty close to our healer, and our healer doesn't die, but I do. I'm back and to the left a little bit, just enough so that I die. On this pull, though, we do a pull that we hadn't ever practiced, so I had no idea really where to stand. So I was kind of like really close to the edge and still on my mount. So when the pack went off, I moved to the right to get line of sight of the pack so I could attack them, and I just ran right off the edge and fell down into Razan's room, which meant that I was unable to do any DPS for that whole pull. It didn't end up. I mean, it cost us a decent amount of time, however much time my DPS would take away, right? But not so much that it's like a major. I mean, we still timed the key, so. Obviously, we would want to avoid that. We need to practice that pull more. But that was just the beginning of the big mistakes that we make in this key. As you can see, our mage is dead because we just let one of the fears go off from one of the Sky Screamers. Because this is another thing that we had not practiced. Was that at least I wasn't here for any of these runs where they did it. We snapped down a couple of augers. We snapped down the 2 augers and the 2 other dudes in the pack at the bottom of the stairs, and we also snapped down 2 Sky Screamers. All of that on top of the boss, because you can kick those things, and the boss doesn't cast anything that you need to kick. So as long as you line of sight those, it's a pretty. I mean, it's sketchy for sure, and it's hard. But if we had practiced it more, then we could have done it easily. We end up wiping there. Luckily, Atal'Dazar is a really small, geographically, dungeon. So when we wipe, we literally walk down 2 sets of stairs and we're back to where we were, rather than something like Shrine in the Storm or Siege of Borealis, where you die and you have to run back for 3 whole minutes before you get to where you were. So that's a good thing about Atal'Dazar. It's a little more forgiving as far as wipes go. Although the timer is only 30 minutes, so it's a tight timer. So you really, I mean, you don't want to wipe anywhere, but on lower keys at least, where the timer's not so, where you're not going to be so close to the timer anyway, this is one of the better places to wipe. Again, we miss a kick. This just is a communication problem, where at this point, several of us have gotten frustrated. We've been doing keys for a while, and we had just barely wiped, so some people were like, "Aw, man, I can't believe we just wiped on that pull," and people were losing focus. So all of our kicks were up, and nobody kicked the Sky Screamer, and we ended up getting feared, and it cost our mage his life, which cost us a B-res, which cost us time. So it was, all in all, not good. So we have 9 deaths at this point. Obviously not good, but also not the end of it. Okay, so a couple other things to keep in mind with this boss. As a ranged player, the things you need to look out for are this Pursuit. He'll cast Pursuit on he'll choose one of the 2 furthest targets, so you can kind of bait it. Like, we try to bait it with our Fire Mage and our Rogue occasionally. If they're the 2 furthest targets away from the boss, then it'll choose one of them, and the Rogue can vanish, and he just won't cast the ability, and the Mage can go invis, and he'll stop the ability as well, and we can just go back to fighting the boss. If he casts Pursuit on me, though, I don't have any ways to just immediately get rid of it. Like, see, our mage just did it right there, where he invises and gets rid of the ability on him. Shadow Priest has no way to do that, so your only options are like kite the boss away, or you can ask for a bop from a Holy Paladin, or a Ret Paladin even. Blessing of Protection will negate all the damage that you take, so you just get a Blessing of Protection and you run into the boss, and he starts munching on you and it does no damage. That's the alternative. On really low keys, you can potentially disperse and survive, but I would not rely on it. See right there, it targeted our rogue, and he ran out, and he was gonna vanish, but he didn't manage to get far enough away in time, or vanish in time, and the boss just ate him. As you can see, it took only 2 ticks, and he was dead. There's no way you can heal through it. The only thing you can do is, like I said, bop whoever's gonna get it, or they just die. A tank is no exception. Pretty much anybody who gets it. I've seen tanks survive it on like a 15, so like something kind of low, but really, it's super deadly, and you want to avoid it as much as possible. So right here, we're backtracking because these are the 2 Sky Screamers, and those are the 4 other mobs that we were gonna snap down onto Razan. That we failed and wiped. So we're just gonna do them right here then. So what we do is we sap that other Sky Screamer, and if you stand in melee of these mobs, then after they cast their first time, they'll never cast again. Those 2 augurs, the augurs are the ones that generally cast. So they've got an ability called Wildfire, that's a single target dot that they leave on people. And they also have an ability called Fiery Enchant. And that one puts a bunch of swirlies on the ground and starts shooting fire like mad. Both of them are super deadly, super dangerous. So you want to interrupt them all the time. But if you stand in melee range like this and you don't move, then they'll cast the first one, you just kick it, and then they won't ever cast again. So it's a really nice thing to know, good way to handle that pack. Right here we're going to do a vanish skip with our rogue. So our rogue pulls this pack in the middle so that we can run in and click on the obelisk. We click on the obelisk, the rogue vanishes. He continues up the stairs to the other portal that we have at the top of the stairs in the middle. He goes in and then comes over to us, and we can fight this boss. So, this is just the regular Spirit Breaker guy. We're going to take him up into Volkal's room. Right here, we need to make sure that we don't move him, because our Fire Mage is combusting. So, a lot of the times, something to keep in mind for any tank players out there, keep an eye on your mage, because on things like this, where you only have the one target, and it's not like a huge combust opportunity, you still want to make sure that if your Fire Mage does combust, you don't pull this guy out of his range, or else you're losing a lot of damage and a lot of time on your key. Because the amount of time that a Fire Mage's combust can take off of your timer is really, really high. So you want to make sure that you are always catering to your Fire Mage. If your Fire Mage is combusting, then do not move. Or if you have to drag your target to other targets, then yeah, you can move. But like with this guy, don't pull him out of range, etc. Okay, so on this next boss coming up, there are a couple key things. It's 2 phases. So the first phase is the 3 totems. Things to watch out for are if you come out of the portal while the boss is being pulled, you can sometimes have a bug where you get invisible leaps. So this green circle on the ground, you wouldn't be able to see it. And that is a huge, huge big deal. So make sure that you just don't click on the portal and you let the tank pull it, or you click on the portal early enough that the tank pulls it after you're out. I'm not entirely sure that that's how the bug works, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So, as far as playing this fight as a Shadow Priest, this is Atal'Dazar, one of my least favorite dungeons to play. It's one of the worst for Shadow Priest, in my opinion. It really doesn't cater well to our spec. So as far you really got to do like a lot of things to try and make up for your damage. Like if you notice my damage in the bottom right hand side, I'm like at least 30k DPS below our rogue, and I'm 40k DPS below our mage. And that's partially because like we've had some weird mistakes, like I fell off down into Razan's room. But it's also just because this dungeon sucks for Shadow Priest. It's really hard. Hard to do good damage here. Also, I'm running an Avoidant 3-piece. You can kind of see it up by the Mythic Plus timer. I'm running an Avoidant 3-piece because there's a lot of damage that hits everybody that Avoidant 3 will help with. Like the life steal thing that the Priestess does. Things like that. thing from the honor guards that is similar to this ability from Volcall. All that stuff gets mitigated by avoidance. So I'm running my avoidant 3-piece to just try and survive. Also because we have a fire mage, so my main job here isn't to do the most damage in the key. My main job is to do consistent good damage and stay alive. So as long as I can stay alive and do consistent good damage, I don't need to do, maximum crazy damage. Now if this were a higher key, 26, 27, then yeah, I mean, you're not going to make the timer unless you're doing really, really good damage. You also need to survive and all that, though. But on something like this, where it's a 23, we're pretty comfortable in 23s. I can sacrifice a little bit of damage for my avoidant 3-piece and not worry so much about doing crazy damage. But the other thing I was going to mention on that last boss, I typically dot all 3 totems and then I focus one. You almost always want your healer and your tank to be helping you with your totem, because your single target is going to be outweighed by any class that has cooldowns. So our fire mage absolutely obliterates his, our rogue absolutely obliterates his, and then mine is like really high health for a long time. So to kind of help with that, I always ask the tank or the healer or both to single target my totem as well. And I also didn't dot our fire mage's totem, because my dots plus his combust on a 23 is enough to kill the totem, and that would be bad because then my totem wouldn't die in time. So on this pull, the only things you need to keep in mind are there's 2 witch doctors, so we sheeped one so that we could only worry about the other one. We only wanted to fight one at a time. There are 2 shield bearers, so don't stand in melee or you'll get shield bashed to death. There's a couple stalkers, so you need to make sure that somebody else pulls those, because if a stalker aggro's on you first, it'll stab you a lot and do a lot of damage, potentially killing you. So you want to make sure somebody else pulls those. Right here we have another communication error where our rogue goes and tricks that far pack to us, and the rogue says, "I've got diamond, you guys watch star." My kick is on cooldown, so I can stun star, but the problem is if you stun a Sky Screamer while it's casting that Screech thing, it'll just recast it as soon as the Screech is over, which could potentially help in this situation, but we had 2 other guys with kicks up, so I was just going to let them kick it. Really, the tank should have kicked it as he was right next to the thing and standing there, but nobody ended up kicking it. The fear went through, and we lost, 5 seconds of DPS, which is not the best. We also got up to about 10 stacks of bursting right there. Anything over like 6 stacks, I typically pop Dispersion. Dispersion will almost completely mitigate the damage you're taking from bursting. Not entirely, but by a lot, like 75%. So if you have like 6, 7, 8 stacks and you're at full health, I usually save my Dispersion until I get like below 30% health or something, so I can see if I actually need it or if I'm going to be able to be healed through it. You can also pop health stones, health pots, keep yourself alive. Okay, so then if you noticed, we didn't do the Blood of the Corruptor on any of by himself. So we're ending up doing him with the last boss, which is totally fine. It just means that this boss fight, which already has a hard time with real estate, meaning like area on the ground that you can walk around, is going to have an even harder time with real estate. But it's not a huge deal because this boss is better for real estate at the beginning of the fight, because there aren't as many spiders, etc. But and we can kill the Blood of the Corruptor before the spiders become a huge problem. And we have a Fire Mage, and the Fire Mage can combust into the blob and kill it a lot faster than if we didn't have a Fire Mage, so it ends up being a good play. Plus, it's more efficient to kill this guy while we're killing the last boss, rather than go out, find that guy, kill him, and come back, and then kill the last boss. So it's just a time save. We probably could have still timed the key had we not pulled the blob with the last boss. However, we probably couldn't have timed the key without this guy after all these mistakes that we've already made. If this was a super clean key, though, we could probably do it without the blob on the last boss. The plan was to 2-chest this 23, but then we ended up making way too many mistakes, so we only barely even timed the key. Okay, so a couple things to keep in mind. The boss will cast Racking Pain, which targets a player, and will put a huge dot on him. So it's like every 15 seconds or something, probably a little bit more than 15 seconds. It's far enough away from each other, the casts, that a ranged player can get it every single time. Not a ranged player, a melee player can get it every single time. Somebody with a kick that's 15 seconds or less, so a shaman or any melee. Typically it's just the tank every single time. If you have a demon hunter, then the demon hunter gets resources from kicking, and you may want to replace the tank's kick with the demon's hunter kick and just let the demon hunter get that kick every single time. But something to keep in mind, sometimes your tank won't kick it, and you need to be ready to kick it yourself. On a 24 of this key, I believe, we were on this last boss, and the spiders got in such a position that our tank had to run away. None of the melee were close enough to kick the boss. I was expecting them to, and they didn't say anything, so I didn't kick it. It ended up going off, and it killed me. So you should keep in mind that even though that's something that will be kicked by melee almost all the time, you should still be ready in case they can't kick it, because you can, and it can save the run, right? The other thing to keep in mind is these spiders. So the way the spiders work is kind of interesting. Each spider has a target, and it'll walk randomly, and then it'll target that person and walk towards them really big. You want to play this fight in melee, all on top of each other, to bait the spiders in a good position. And that's about it. That's Atal'Dazar for you. So, thanks for watching. See you guys later.